sure who all these people are. But anyway,
if that wasn't a covert protest, I don't know what is. That was exactly what it was.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. You would think that, like, if you're the first lady on Team Blue, that you would wear a blue suit. But on the other hand, it may have been a red power suit, and that you can interpret it that way too. But this one's really interesting. So this is in-person voting on election day, and it looks like to me the same red power suit. Now, if you're on Team Blue, you do not wear a red suit.
No.
When you go vote. This is like,
if we were doubting before, now we know.
In all of this excitement, so Obama gets 69 million votes. And I would have to contrast the excitement of that 2008, that presidential election year, to the excitement of, or the non-excitement thereof, of the 2020 election year. I mean, it was as dead as a doornail, but there's 12 million extra votes. So how do we get 12 million extra votes?
Yeah. Right.
And
the lack of excitement accompanied with that, it makes it doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. So, I mean, as an engineer, you look at that and you say that's an outlier. So you basically, okay, so the second was way sooner than the first. And so people say, well, they both served one term. And it's like, well, but one was allowed to campaign, and one actually, it seemed like that there were some sort of voting irregularities that happened, but that person was at least allowed to campaign. But the number two short feather on the left side wasn't even allowed to campaign. He was removed from his campaign. So clearly it fits the wording of the prophecy.
All right, brothers and sisters, you asked for him to come back, and he's back. This is Brother Yuri, Brother Rob. What's your full name again? It's
Rob. You can call me Rob.
He's all Rob. Okay, it's not Robert Eugene Yuri. No.
Well, it's actually Robin. The only one after ninth grade, the only one who called me Robin was my mom. So.
Okay, I don't want to get punched in the eye. So it's Rob. And I'm excited to have Rob back because Rob is full of not just information, but he delivers it with the spirit that you have these days that I feel, and that's the Holy Ghost. Not few have, but many need to understand. Let me rephrase that and comprehend, because our prophet is always telling us that we need to not just feel the spirit, but recognize what it is, where it's coming from. And that's what we try to teach people to do, is to feel and recognize the Spirit of God. Thank you so much, Rob, for coming back and being here to talk about something that is timely. I said that this is exciting, but it's not exciting. What I meant, what did I say? What was the words I used? It's relevant, it's timely. But before we came on, it's powerful, but it's not fun. But I'm going to let you take it away. Did we do a bio on you last time, Rob? Or do you want to introduce yourself?
Close enough. Nobody cares.
Yes, they do. They do.
Well, I don't mean it that way. I mean, nobody wants to. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear me jibber jab about my life. And
all right.
Stuff,
then
so.
In 2 sentences, will you just tell who you are and why you're here?
Yeah. So, Troy, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you've been doing with your podcast, trying to get the specific types of messages out to people. So I guess I would just say I'm a father of 4, a grandfather of 11, and I love the gospel, and I love my Savior, and I just see that there are going to be lots and lots of changes coming on the earth, and I think some people are kind of have awakened to them, and then other people. For whatever reason, are still, just wanting to kind of like just hit the snooze button and go back to sleep, and they just want things to continue the way that the way they've been going. But I just think we're in a time where you're listening to the prophets, all of our 15 prophet seers and revelators, I think they are working overtime to try to get our attention to help us understand that, time is running out and what we do right now matters. And what we do in our families, our personal lives, and in our communities, it matters. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And then I've had a few people come on and talk about Ezra's Eagle before. And I know that you and I have had some lengthy conversations over the phone about it. And there have been some very prominent figures in the Latter-day Saint community, as well as other Christian denominations that speak about Ezra's Eagle. It's not in the King James Bible, but it is in the Apocrypha, in the book of Ezra. But very fascinating indeed. And we don't have a market. Latter-day Saints don't have definitely don't have a market on that because it's not even in any of our canon. But why is this important right now? And why did I say it was timely, Rob?
Well, because the if my understanding is correct, there's a brother, Michael Rush, probably 10 years ago, basically going through the Apocrypha and reading Ezra's Eagle, basically put an interpretation to it that has been popularized, and it basically aligns up presidents, and we're going to talk about that. So I've got some slides we can go through and some pictures. Pictures always help. But that align, there's this eagle and there's the feathers that align with the presidents, but there's an expiration date on it. And the expiration date on this interpretation of the prophecy is January 20th of 2025. So is his interpretation going to come true? Or is I guess the question is it a true prophecy? It's in the Apocrypha. We're going to talk about that. And is that interpretation, is his interpretation correct? And so, but we're going to find out. He was on Glenn Beck. He was on Glenn a couple of months ago. And, I think he used the word expiration date. There's an expiration date on it. So we're going to be able to find out whether or not this interpretation is true.
All right.
And it's just, we're right up against it. It's like, less than a month away. So,
yeah, let's give it a go. Do you want to share what you did with me, if you don't mind? And we can talk about this headline that just recently came out.
Congress has power to block Trump from taking office, but lawmakers must act now. So this came out the day after Christmas, 12/26. So it's definitely in the collective conscience of the world to there's a lot of people who would be very interested in not having President-elect Trump take office.
Well, it's interesting, Rob, because we felt lately everyone's just like, oh, he's in Time magazine. It looks like he's not getting a lot of pushback. Did we really think that something like this wasn't going to pop up sooner or later? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I've been a little bit kind of thinking it's just a little too quiet. I expected quite a bit of I don't know, some sort of activity like all this summer and everything. And when I say activity, I just abnormal, just craziness, protests, whatever. I just expected something, and it just seemed like it just didn't materialize. So
yeah.
It feels a little too quiet, but sometimes it just feels that way. And I think part of that is like one of the things that's really important is to really, what's the attitude that we should take towards this as members of the church. And we know there's going to be bumps. There's going to be bumps in the road, significant bumps in the road. And how do we personally manage that? And how do we deal with it? And how do we help our families deal with it? Okay. So Ezra's Eagle, it's as you said, Troy, it's in the Apocrypha, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and where that came from. I think it's going to be interesting. There's a number of different names for it. It's like the vision of the eagle prophecy, the fourth kingdom prophecy, which is really interesting because that references, and in the specific prophecy, it references Daniel's the beast of Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 2. And Ezra is told that basically that he got to see some stuff that Daniel didn't speak about. So essentially, and I guess as we just talked about, it's a succession of leaders which are represented by feathers of this three-headed eagle. And then we get to the eagle heads, which kind of come on the scene. And the eagle heads represent, in this specific interpretation, corrupt powers of basically America, of a fallen America. And then we go to the last couple of feathers. So that's kind of how we go through the prophecy. So I'd just like to go ahead and read a couple of verses from Helaman. And Elder Bednar referenced several chapters. He referenced the phrase, "These iniquities did come unto them in the space of not many years." And he gave a talk about pride. And beware of pride, lest we become as the Nephites of old. In the space of not many days, weeks, months, or years, we might forfeit our spiritual birthright for far less than a mess of pottage. That was one of the summary statements of his talk in conference. I'll just go ahead and read this if that's all right. All these iniquities did come unto them in the space of not many years. And it came to pass that the Lamanites did hunt the band of the robbers of Gadian. The Lamanites were, at this point, were more righteous, and they got rid of the Gadians out of their land. But the Nephites, and it came to pass on the other hand, that the Nephites did build them up and support them until they had overspread all the land of the Nephites. And thus they did obtain the sole management of the government, insomuch that they did trample under their feet and smite and rend and turn their backs upon the poor and the meek and the humble followers of God. And thus we see that they were in an awful state and ripening for an everlasting destruction. So that's the warning we get from the Book of Mormon, and we're going to do another one. So there's a picture of the eagle. Had a little bit of fun with artificial intelligence, and it's kind of interesting because what you can actually do from it comes from the larger body of like images that are that it's trained on, and those images have to come from basically stuff that everybody has taken pictures of, or artwork that's been produced. And
so the more people generate, the more it becomes like something very vivid.
So it's really interesting. Well, I won't go into that, but just spending time with artificial intelligence, it's on one hand, it's really good. It's just like anything that's like powerful. It has the ability to be used for good or for bad. It's just it's just an ability. It's just power. But anyway, so it's the three-headed eagles. We got the feathers. Now these feathers aren't specifically any numbered or anything like that. We'll get into that. But there's three eagle heads. So the feathers represent presidents, and then the eagle heads represent some corrupt powers that come out towards the end. And I've got a little scripture here, and I'm going to preface the scripture with Moroni. Okay, Moroni, he's got the records from his dad, and he is finishing up the Book of Mormon, and he has just seen the destruction of his people. He's writing the abridgment, and I don't know if abridgment's the right thing. He's writing what he wants to write with the messages that he would like us to have from the plates of ether, which was the complete annihilation of a civilization. He's seen our day. It's like, I know your day. I know you're doing. Jesus Christ has shown you unto me. So he has seen our day. He knows us. He's seen what's going on in our times. And he is frantically trying to he's got a call and a mission to basically try to create this, the Book of Mormon, and finish up the Book of Mormon, the record that his dad handed to him, and basically warn us that we would be wiser than they had been. And apparently, there's we could use a little bit more wisdom than we have as a nation. But anyway, I'll just read this. Wherefore, O ye Gentiles. So he's speaking directly to us. So he's finishing this up. He's going to bury it. He's not writing this because he wants to be on the New York Times bestsellers, or he wants to publish it, and he's writing it. He's going to bury it, and it's going to come forward at a future date. So this record and what he's writing is specifically to us. And I think Elder Bednar made that point very well in his talk. Wherefore, O ye Gentiles, the Lord commandeth you, so this is a commandment from the Lord. from our Savior. When ye shall see these things come among you, that ye shall awake to a sense of your awful situation because of the secret combination which shall be among you. So Moroni is basically saying, hey, it's going to be, I've seen it. I've seen what's going on. It's going to be among you. And you guys need to wake up and figure out what's going on so you can do what you're supposed to do.
You know, it's interesting because he's basically saying, hey, the church didn't, he's speaking to us, but, you know, referring to those of his day that weren't awake as well. And he understands if you don't wake up, your leaders can't keep waking you up. There's going to come a time because people are like, how come we don't hear talks like we did when Ezra Taft Benson was alive? If you ask the brethren, they'll say, well, you have those words. They're like scripture. Those prophets and leaders have spoken, and we still do. We hear Elder Bednar give that amazing talk in General Conference.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's an excellent point. I mean, in the fall of the October 2020 conference, Elder Bednar, I think his talk, I mean, President Nelson opened up the conference with a, you know, kind of an opening and a welcome. And the first full address was Elder Bednar. And the first thing he talked about how he and his wife had reviewed their food storage. And, you know, he made a joke that, you know, that they had to dispose of it properly because they didn't want to create another, they didn't want to unleash another, I can't remember his words. They didn't want to unleash another pandemic on the world or something. But he said something that was just exactly kind of mirrors what you were saying, Troy. And that was that he says the saints, you know, some saints opine, let's see, I'll try to remember this. I'm going to brutalize this
You're
quote.
good. Even if you paraphrase, that's okay.
Yeah, some saints opine that since the brethren haven't spoken of it extensively, that there's no need for food storage. Again, I think I murdered that quote. But then this phrase was, this phrase. He said, "But a concert of clarity of previous warnings should be far more." Loud than any single message. So he's basically saying what you just said, Troy. They've been warning this for years. I think it was 1937 when they put that's when they really started putting the latest version of the preparedness and the year supply of food and energy. And that's been going on and even before that was kind of going on with even in the early settlers of the Salt Lake Valley.
You're right. Because Elder Bednar his talk was not about food storage. I think he was implying and making an innuendo about basically our awful situation, or that, look, go back, read the old talks, understand my words, and understand that I'm giving you a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to wake you up and go back and watch old talks. That's what he's saying. And he's using the food storage as an example. I love that.
So that was an interesting talk. So anyway, so there's a concept of the three-headed eagle, and we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about Ezra. People go like, who's Ezra? And then you see this EZRA'S, ESDRAS. We'll talk about what that is. So Ezra was born in Babylon. He was probably not a contemporary of Daniel. In fact, Daniel probably passed away before Ezra was born, but maybe there was a little bit of overlap. There's a fair amount of uncertainty of the dates. That's one thing for sure. When you start looking into history and dates and biblical history, there's lots of opinions. But you know, roughly around the 5th century BC, he was born as an exile in Babylon in 600. It was actually 606. Well, again, saying this with the caveat that dates, so there's a certain amount of uncertainty with all these dates. But I'll just use these dates. 606 was the first incursion of Babylon, and then probably 597 was the second incursion. Most people don't realize there were actually 3 incursions of Jerusalem by Babylon. And
Mm-hmm.
then there was the 580. And that second one was about the time where Nephi and Lehi left. And then the first one was where Daniel was carted off. And then the one in 587 was where Zedekiah was, he got to keep his sight long enough to see his family put to death in front of him, and then he got his eyes poked out and carted off to Babylon as well. So that's a happy story. So Ezra was a scribe and a priest, and he led a group of exiles to Jerusalem. This is circa about 457 BC, and was instrumental in like putting together the second temple and the worship surrounding the second temple. He reintroduces the Torah, and this is really interesting. If you read in Nehemiah and Ezra in the Old Testament, read those books, and then specifically focus on reading chapter 8 of Nehemiah, and compare that to the first few chapters of Mosiah, King Benjamin's address, and you have not exactly, but very, very similar things going on. And basically, it's the fall feast of the Lord. So that's really interesting. And Ezra's, ESDRAS. So that is the Latin transliteration of the Greek, which was transliterated from Hebrew. So that's the same name as Ezra. Okay, so we spoke about the Apocrypha. So this is really cool. This is I got these pictures from the Joseph Smith papers, and this is the Bible that Joseph Smith used when he did the Joseph Smith translation. This is the Bible he used, and you can go through and you can look at all the pages of this. And so this is cool, and I can send you a link for this, Troy, because I think that'd be kind of interesting to look this up.
That is neat.
And so, so there we go. There's the Old Testament. There's Ezra and Nehemiah that I just spoke of, and then we have the books called Apocrypha. So this specific book, King James doesn't have it, but this specific, and I don't know which translation it is. You probably read it on this page right here. You could probably find that out. And I've read that, but I don't remember. I don't remember it. So the Apocrypha was in his book. And if you remember in section 91 of the Doctrine and Covenants, Joseph asks if he should translate the Apocrypha. And I've just put some notes here. I'm just going to read this real quick. Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you concerning the Apocrypha. There are many things contained therein that are true, and it is mostly translated correctly. There are many things contained therein that are not true, which are the interpolations by the hands of men. Verily I say unto you that it is not needful that the Apocrypha should be translated. Therefore, whoso readeth it, let him understand, for the Spirit manifesteth truth. And so we go to Moroni 10, 3, 4, and 5. Of course, the power of the Holy Ghost, you may know the truth of all things. And whoso is enlightened by the Spirit shall obtain benefit therefrom. So he's saying that there's some stuff in there. And whoso receiveth it not by the Spirit cannot be benefited. Therefore, it is not needful that it should be translated.
That's a powerful statement. That is a powerful, that's very powerful.
Put a full stop right behind that. And I think, with that as being a background in the context, we'll talk about this a little bit more. So there is the little circle around 2 Esdras. And now we'll jump right in and we'll go and look at this. We'll look at this infographic of the eagle with the proper outline of the feathers. And so what Michael Rush, it seemed like, and again, I'll say this the best that I understand it. And Michael, if I get it wrong, I apologize. I'm trying to get it right. I think I'm getting it right. If I got it wrong, well, like I say, I apologize. So we have these series of feathers that are outlined in the text, and it's the 11th and 12th chapter of Second Esdras. And so what Michael noticed was that there was this feather that was longer than any of the others, and he also recognized that it was an eagle, and it was about kind of secret combinations or Gadiant robberish type society. And these feathers, so basically figured out that, like, he said, well, if that's longer than any of the others, and these feathers are presidents, then that long one would have to be Roosevelt because he ended up serving longer than any of the others.
Right.
And so that puts a can't find my cursor here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. So that puts a marker on it. So the first feather reference would be Hoover, and we have the what's called the League of Nations. We just finished World War.
Right.
We just finished World War One. We're actually in the we're actually pre the massive depression. We got Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower. So it was really interesting. Eisenhower definitely spoke about the military industrial complex and how that had really taken on a life of its own. And he was saying that there's a lot of money there and there's a lot of power there. And so he gave us a warning about that. And of course, we have Truman and what was it called, the OSS, and that ultimately became the CIA. So we got all this interesting stuff. And so the red feathers. So we have, so the text says, and two of them shall perish, their middle time approaching. So we have Kennedy and Nixon as these two short feathers, which are basically, so to be a short feather is to be removed prematurely from the office. So if you're placed into office by the voice of the people, if the powers that be, kind of the shadow government, however you want to call that, I'll just say the Gadiant robbers. If the Gadiant robbers remove you prematurely, then you become a short feather. So it doesn't have anything to do with how many terms you served or how long you were in or whatever. It was just like if you were removed by the Gadiant robbers. So Kennedy, so we have Kennedy, and we know how Kennedy was removed from office. And then Nixon, there was the whole Watergate thing, and so that's just part of our history. And then we go all the way through the feathers on the right side here, all the way to Obama, and then we get over to feather number 1 on the left side. And so the text says 4 shall be kept until their end approach. So we got these four feathers, and the end is approaching, according to the prophecy. And then 2, so basically there are 12 feathers, and then there's 8 contrary or short feathers, and 2 of them happen on the right side, and then 6 of the short feathers happen on the left side of the. So we get 2 shall be kept to the very end, and okay. So then when there was one set up, but shortly it appeared no more. So this is referencing to Trump. So, and when I first heard about this, I heard of Trump is a short feather, and when I first heard, like I said, when I first heard about it, I kind of thought it was I kind of thought it was bunk. I thought, oh, come on, man, give me a break. That's what I thought.
Right. And I think a lot of us kind of felt that until we dove into this.
Yeah. Then all of the stuff that we never thought we would see in our nation happened regarding to the pandemic and all the craziness that went on there. And so all of a sudden people start going like, well, hey, maybe there's something going on here. So Trump is a short feather, and I'm going to just talk about that for a second. And just going to point out there's just a couple of facts. So this is the 2008 Democratic National Convention. This was in Mile High Stadium. Go Broncos if you're a Broncos fan. And whether you're red or blue, left or right, I mean that's not what I'm about. That's not what this presentation is about. But one thing that you had to like recognize is there was an excitement and an electricity in the air that just hadn't happened around a presidential election or a candidate. So we have Barack Obama, the first Black candidate for presidency, and that place was buzzing. There would talk about excitement. There was an incredible amount of energy around that. And again, this is not right or left or red or blue. This is just it was. I mean, it was undeniable. There was an incredible amount of enthusiasm, and we saw voter turnout like we just never really seen before. So I'm going to show one more chart, and that will finish us up with Trump. And so this is just the number of votes: Obama, McCain, Obama, Romney, Clinton, Trump, Biden, Trump, and Harris, Trump. And if you look at these, so in all of this excitement, so Obama gets 69 million votes. And I would have to contrast the excitement of that 2008, that presidential election year, to the excitement of, or the non-excitement thereof, of the 2020 election year. I mean, it was as dead as a doornail, but
Yeah.
there's 12 million extra votes. So how do we get 12 million extra votes?
Yeah. Right.
And so,
and the lack of excitement accompanied with that, it makes it doesn't make sense, does it?
yeah, it doesn't make sense. So I mean, as an engineer, you look at that and you say that's an outlier. So you would remove that and say something happened. There's some problems with the data. I'm not going to include that in my data because something just seems wrong with that. And if I include that in my data, I'm going to skew my data. It's an outlier.
Right.
You basically throw those out.
And even an accountant, like for some company, would be like, something, we need to audit this. There's something wrong here.
So anyway, so that's all I'll say about that. But if you look at it, so and if you look at kind of, there's a kind of this growing thing as well. There's a background of population growth that would feed into that as well. But so there's an anomaly, some sort of anomaly, some sort of shenanigans going on there. Anyway, that's probably enough said there. Okay, so that finishes up the Trump. So that finishes up the Trump feather that he was set up, but he did take office, so he was set up. So, but it shortly appeared no more. So the next one is, the second was sooner away than the first. So this is this feather here. The Biden feather was sooner away than the first. So this is some really interesting stuff that I dug up. So if you go, you can go see all the covers of Time magazine. Like, I don't know how far back you can go, but a long way back. But here's all the covers for 2024. At least at the time that I did this, there's another cover. And so I just wanted to point out that so the April 8th cover, we'll talk about that. The August 5th cover, and then the October 14th cover is kind of an interesting one. We'll talk about those three. But you could go through, and it's really interesting because you look at the stories and just the covers, you can kind of get like kind of a snapshot of like what was going on during the year. And I think that's why they do it. It's a fairly interesting thing. So we're going to go through this, and this is the article it's the April 8th issue, but I mean, so it's a magazine stand date, so it's probably like 3.5, 4 weeks before the article, the magazine has to be written, and then you have a date so that it can sit on the magazine stand and not expire. So this is mid-March or something like that. It's when the articles were written. So last year, Biden's campaign is in trouble. Will the turnaround plan work? So as I read this, I want you all to think about who is the supervisor and who is the subordinate in this conversation, the way this article is voiced. Last June, Barack Obama slipped into the White House to deliver a warning to Joe Biden. The state of Biden's reelection campaign was shaky. Obama told him over a private lunch, according to a Democrat briefed about the meeting, defeating Donald Trump would be harder in 2024. The mood of the country was sour. Persuading unhappy voters was going to be difficult. Biden needed to move more aggressively to make the race a referendum on Trump, Obama advised. Okay, the article continues. The former president left believing the current one had gotten the memo. Again, think about the voice. But over the next 6 months, Obama saw a few signs of improvement. I mean, you could say Ronald Reagan did, or George W. Bush did, or what. I mean, it just, as you read this and you think about the voicing of this article, it just slaps you in the face almost. But over the next 6 months, Obama saw a few signs of improvement. In December, he returned to the White House at Biden's invitation. I'm glad he was invited that time. This time, Obama's message was more urgent. He expressed concern the reelection campaign was behind schedule. Biden needed to get it together, or Trump would sweep the 7 key battleground states in November. Now, remember, this is in December of 2023. This reported visit. So this is a year ago. They had the data that basically Biden was, that Trump was going to sweep and he did. He ended up sweeping the battleground states. So they had this information. Now that's not what I was hearing in the news in December of last year or January or February. I wasn't hearing any of that.
No. So when you say pay attention to the voice here, I think I'm on the same page with you. What did you mean by that?
It's kind of like somebody's coming to give a review or to basically tell somebody to shape up.
Right.
And so basically, I always thought that the president of the United States of America was the most powerful man in the world. So who would be coming into his office to tell him that he needed to shape up?
And what kind of a leader do we want that needs somebody, a former president, to come and tell them how to run their administration?
So I just felt it was really, really interesting. And granted, there are advisory roles and there is all that, but the voice of this was really extremely interesting to me. Okay, so of course we got the one word on the cover. We got stuck. And the picture is, and this picture actually on one level kind of breaks my heart because it's just reminiscent of I'm sure everybody saw it, where Joe's riding up to there's cameras there, and he's going to ride up on a bicycle to show that he's out and he's in good shape and everything, but he literally can't dismount the bike and he falls over. And it was just, I just, when I saw that, I just felt so bad for anybody who would have to go through that. It almost just broke my heart to see that happen, because to see somebody who was so out of control of his facilities that he just couldn't actually bring the bike to a stop and then dismount the bike and stand and just say a few words, which was, I'm sure, what he was supposed to do. So anyway, so they put that picture up there to just bring back the memories of that, it seems like. But okay, so then we get to so this is a June 27th article from NBC News. I just pulled this off of the website. There were dozens of articles along this. Won't read the whole article, but I'll just read the headline: "Babbling and Horse, Biden's debate performance sends Democrats into a panic." So, so it looks like, there was lots of talk about whether a debate was going to happen or it wasn't going to happen. But of course, the debate happens, and it was a disaster. And it was so interesting because a lot of people were acting as surprised if they didn't realize that this was going to be a disaster. I mean, you could see this one coming from 100 miles away. It was not going to be a good performance. It wasn't going to be good for our president. So he just had a lot of difficulties. And see if I can just pull out one line.
Which shows you're a man of compassion, Rob. Just talking about the bike incident.
He repeatedly tripped over his words, misspoke, and lost his train of thought. I'm sorry, Troy.
No, I'm just saying you're a man of compassion. The bike. I felt that no matter how you feel about Biden, he's still son of God, right? And we feel for him when we see people in those situations where they can't help themselves. I'm glad you brought that up. It still shows our humanity. Right.
Well, I mean, it was interesting because, there were a lot of people who laughed at it and they thought it was the funniest thing. And it was kind of like, on one hand, I can see where some of that sentiment is coming from. But on the other hand, I don't know. It's like if you had an elderly parent that like fell down and broke a hip or got really hurt, and ultimately, those kinds of injuries can be the beginning of the end for elderly people. And so it just,
so you were saying, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but go ahead. The babbling, go back to what you were talking about.
Yeah, so the debate was, the debate was pretty much a disaster. And so, um, and my view is I think the people who put the debate on allowed the debate to happen. They wanted the debate to happen. They wanted it to be a disaster because they needed to do something because they were looking at the polls and they were seeing that they were in real trouble. So if you were voting for Team Blue, you said that you were in real trouble, and they felt like they needed to do something, and apparently they did. So the next magazine cover was, we have Kamala Harris walking on the scene, and of course this is like we don't know who this picture is of, but presumably that's President Biden walking off of the scene. So just weeks after a disastrous debate spurred by dramatic revolt within his own party, Joseph R. Biden Jr., the 46th president of the United States, caved on July 21st to concerns among Democrats about his dwindling reelection chances, dropping out of the contest against former President Donald Trump. So Biden drops out of the contest, and I won't read the next statement. I'll let you guys go ahead and pause the video and read that if you'd like. So anyway, so Biden drops out. Okay, but and we're looking at all of this in the context of the Gadiant robbers removing somebody sooner away than the previous feather, which would have been Trump. So here we are. We've got Jill Biden. She's fired up in her red power suit. She's going to see the first a woman to be elected president of Mexico. And WWD is I think it stands for Women's Wear Daily. I think so. This is like a kind of a fashion magazine, online fashion magazine. But there's our first lady Jill Biden waving as she gets off of the plane, and there she is. And I'm not sure who all these people are, but anyway.
If that wasn't a covert protest, I don't know what is. That was exactly what it was.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. You would think that, like, if you're the first lady on Team Blue, that you would wear a blue suit, but on the other hand, it may have been a red power suit, and that you can interpret it that way too. But this one's really interesting. So this is in-person voting on election day, and it looks like to me the same red power suit. Now, if you're on Team Blue, you do not wear a red suit when you go vote. This is like,
if we were doubting before, now we know.
Yeah. If you were Ty Detmer and you won the Heisman in 1990, and I actually, I've got this, this is I know he was married after he won the Heisman, but it would have been like if he would have been married before the Heisman when he got that in 1990, going to the Heisman Trophy where he does his acceptance speech and his wife wearing, University of Utah red, right?
Yeah.
Rather than BYU blue. There's no way that would happen. No. Anyway. Okay, so
you wonder if maybe she voted for Trump too. Maybe she did.
Well, yeah. So how does that go? There's lots of conjecture, but I think, wearing a red suit on voter day is I think that's a silent protest. Okay, so I think you could probably look at that, and you could put you could do the old vaudeville hook and do the exit stage right, and Joe got the hook to be unceremoniously dismissed and terminated. So that would be another way to do that magazine cover.
Did you put the hook there?
Somebody did. I'll just say that.
That's neat.
Somebody had some good graphic skills.
Oh, good.
But yeah. So that's interesting. Okay, so the second was way sooner than the first, and so people say, well, they both served one term, and it's like, well, but one was allowed to campaign, and one actually, it seemed like that there were some sort of voting irregularities that happened, but that person was at least allowed to campaign, but the number two short feather on the left side wasn't even allowed to campaign. He was removed from his campaign. So clearly it fits the clearly it fits the wording of the prophecy. Which really brings us to right now. The two that remain thought also in themselves to reign. So there's two more feathers, and that's why this is like so urgent. That's why there's an expiration date on it. We've got these two other feathers before the eagle heads come out. And the two that remain thought also in themselves to reign. Now it's really interesting because these two, as they're spoken of, they come out, they kind of come out together. And that's why we said we're going to talk about the JD Vance cover. And then there's the other cover that wasn't included on the previous montage of covers, was because that hadn't come out when I put that slide together. So we get Donald Trump, he gets the cover person of the year, and we have JD Vance. They did in fact sweep all seven of the states, and there they are. And so they are pretty much, they're in fact, not only they are thinking to reign, they're working fast and furiously to so they be able to hit the ground running. Yeah, it seems like there probably hasn't been a president in the history that I know of that has been working harder and faster in kind of the whole lame duck period to be prepared so they can hit the ground running. So we go back to this, and this is the troubling phrase. When they so thought, behold, they're awake, one of the heads that were at rest, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. So that's where we are. So the question is they thought in themselves to reign, but apparently they don't. It doesn't say that. It says that the heads, one of the heads woke up, and they're basically, and then head starts moving, and you realize these other two heads are kind of attached in some way to the middle head, but they eat up those two feathers that had thought to reign. And so what does eat up mean? So I think that could mean a number of things. One is it could literally mean that, essentially something happened where they were incapacitated, or some legal challenges happened, or something happened to keep them from reigning. And then what happens though is like this center eagle head comes on the scene. So that is where we are. And and actually, Troy, we could probably, after this all plays out, and we'll see, we could probably come back and take another look at it, after January 20th.
That's exactly what I was thinking. This has to be an ongoing, this is flowing water here. This is not stagnant. So we definitely need to revisit this often, Rob.
Yeah. So that would be, that'd be an interesting thing to do. So we'll see how this goes. We've got, less than a month, and we're going to find out if this eagle head awakes. But what that would mean, if this eagle head awakes, it sounds like that there would be some person or some organization headed probably by a person that's going to stand up and kind of say, hey, go ahead and have me, I'll kind of fix things until we can figure out new elections or deal with this legal challenge or whatever. So somebody would step forward. So we're going to find out whether or not that happens.
Yeah. And it doesn't surprise me. I mean, were we surprised? Did we think we could just sit back and allow 4 years, well, because I was wondering, are people cutting and running because they're afraid? You're seeing these people leave the United States saying that it's because, the movie stars and the influencers. I don't think anyone wouldn't have felt that what's happened yesterday in that headline that you showed at the beginning wasn't timely, wasn't going to happen. And hopefully it doesn't get worse. But let's see it play out, Rob.
Yeah.
And come back, please.
Yeah.
So
we're really into just the final stages of the electoral process. And so, of course, the election is November 5th. Then we have the certification, or basically the electors meet and cast the electoral votes. And that happens the first Tuesday after the second Wednesday in December. So we had that already. And then the next key date is Congress is sworn in on January 3rd. And then, the votes have to be like delivered to Washington, but that's a date that has to happen. And then on January 6th, the electoral votes are counted by Congress. And so this article that we just came out yesterday is basically a way to do some sort of legal challenge at that counting of the electoral ballots by Congress on January 6th. So it seems like there's talk of some sort of additional January 6th activity, with the shoe being on the other foot, I suppose. So
Yeah.
hopefully, Michael Rush, if you see this, I love you. I hope you're wrong, not because I want you to be wrong. I hope you're wrong because I love this country and I would love to see, I what it means for the country is just like some really dark times immediately in our future.
Well, and I
And
know you and I were talking off, on the phone about some worst case scenarios, and I know we didn't really mention them here, but you know, it's scary times. We saw what was, the assassination attempt on soon to be President 47. 47. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, and that was the first thing on our mind when we started talking the other day was, is he going to even survive? What are they capable of? But let's not go there yet, right?
yeah. I mean, there's a million ways that you could talk about that, and I really, you can talk about that, and I think you end up getting worked up, but I think the message that's important is a message of hope, and we know that if we will follow those who hold priesthood keys, if we'll follow our prophet, if we'll follow, we've got stake presidents and bishops and elders quorum presidents who hold keys. We got mission presidents. We got temple presidents. Of course, we have all of our general. Those are our local leaders, and then we have our general leaders that hold priesthood keys. And President Nelson, I don't remember if it's the April talk or the October of 2020 talk, where he spoke of uh, basically Captain Moroni preparing his people, and he spoke of the places of security, and there was the temple was a place of security unlike any other, and then our home sanctifying our homes, and then our assembly places. Uh, and I basically it was right out of Isaiah chapter 4, verses 5 and 6,
Yeah.
that he spoke of, and it's like the promise. And so I just, going through, a handful of like things and a certain amount of anxiety. And but I've really kind of got to a point where I'm just kind of resolved in hope that, hey, however things are going to happen, if I'm trying to do the best I can to be prepared, if I'm trying to sustain our priesthood keys, that's what I can do. And I just need to
Amen.
with my life. And that message of hope is I think is going to become, however things go, we know that things get really crazy, and whether this is a specific example of it or not, and we're going to find, like I say, we'll find out, but we know things that are going to get crazy. And so when these times do happen where things really are crazy, the hope, that we're faith, hope, and charity, the hope that's within us is that is the hope in the Savior and the atonement, to help us not only with our own personal worthiness and our own personal whatever, but basically to deal with any of the. I mean, the atonement is a broad sweeping
Yep.
thing that you start thinking about it, you start talking about it, and it's like it kind of like blows your mind because of the expanse of it, and you go, how could this be possible? But um,
I
but
agree.
anyway, so yeah, so I just have a testimony. I have hope that that we have a promise that if we are prepared, and on one hand, I kind of hate that phrase. If you're prepared, you shall not fear. Because you can always be a little bit more prepared, right? So at some point, you just have to say, "Look, I'm really trying to do everything I can do, and I may not be prepared perfectly, but I've been doing what I can do, and I'm in a reasonable spot, and I am facing the right direction, and I'm moving forward. So I think you can have hope in that promise, and I that's where I'm putting my hope.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you, Troy.
All right. Take care.